Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this week's IIBA Tools and Techniques Thursday microclass. My name is Larissa Raga, and I'm very excited to welcome our speaker for this week, who is Aaron Khan. Aaron is a technical project manager for an artificial intelligence company or a startup based in Cape Town. And over the years, he's been working as a corporate software engineer, but he found his passion shifting from writing code to optimizing his team's output and enhancing the way that they work in their development environment. During the past year, with the help of his team, they have successfully developed a process to ensure that all team members and stakeholders are aligned. Today, we are very, very lucky that Aaron will be sharing with us how they managed to achieve this through taking us through the Azure DevOps configuration. Before I hand over to our speaker, I'd like to just talk through some house rules. If you have a question, we will be doing our questions towards the end of the presentation, so this first point does not apply to this specific presentation. So we will be following point 2, which is post your questions in the chat during the presentation. And at the end, Nosipo will be going through the questions. We'll ask them to Aaron and he'll answer them. The presentation will be uploaded on our IIBA YouTube page, and we will be sharing the link on LinkedIn as well. Please remember that in order to become a member of the IIBA SA, please follow this link, which we'll also post in the chat. And if you're keen to present a tools and techniques session, please feel free to follow the link provided as well. Just a note, our email address will also be posted, as well as the link for future events. I'd like to hand over to Aaron now, who will kick off his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Larissa, and hello to everybody I don't know, which is most of you. I have actually got quite a bit to speak about today, so I'm going to go through things quite quickly, so please bear with me. I'm also going to be jumping between my PowerPoint and between Azure, obviously, as that's where most of our lessons are going to be happening. So without further ado, I'm just going to get into it. Go ahead and share my screen. Larissa, can you see?
Yes.
Great. Then to begin with, welcome to Keeping Azure Agile. My name is Aaron Khan. As Larissa said, I'm a technical project manager. And at my startup, I've been lucky to actually have the time to dive deep into Azure DevOps and to actually figure things out and come up with a process with my team that has really been incredibly beneficial. And this has happened over the last 12 months, and I'm here to share this with you. So moving on. The assumptions I'm going into this presentation with is that the attendees will have a basic level of use with Azure DevOps. If you don't, that's not to say that you're going to get lost. It just means that you might get a bit confused as I'm jumping between different points all the time. And likewise, I'm assuming a basic knowledge of Agile and Scrum. But don't worry, I'm going to speak through all these different topics and the reason I am making these assumptions. So, as I've said, we're going straight out of the PowerPoint and we're going straight into Azure. Now I've shared my screen with you just so it's a bit easier to actually jump across. And now that we're here, the first thing we're going to want to do is actually just quickly go into the user settings, hit the theme, join the feature in the dark theme setting. And now that we've got that, I'm going to head on over to the organizational settings. And the very first thing we're actually going to do before we've even created a project is head on over to this process tab over here. And you will see that Azure DevOps has actually given you a few basic processes to begin with. Now we've got the basic, which obviously we're not touching. We've got Agile, we've got Scrum and CMMI. For this presentation, we're actually going to be we're going to create a process of the Agile one, not the Scrum one. And the reason for this is because the Agile one has got the user stories where the Scrum one just really deals in tasks. So immediately what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and create this inherited process. Now we're going to call this IBA, or let's rather just say Scrum demo. process. Okay. And now we've got an exact duplicate of this Agile process, and we are able to edit it as much as we please. So going in here, you can see it gives you your base list of tickets. It gives you your default backlog level, and obviously it would tell you your projects, but we don't have any created yet. So now I'm actually just going to quickly jump back into the PowerPoint. It's time to mess with tickets. So before I begin, I just want to run through and make sure we're all on the same page as to firstly what a user story is. And now please don't quote me on this. I did write this myself. So a user story is really just a representation of a piece of work that delivers a specific value. Acceptance criteria will generally be defined by the PO or the equivalent, and this will be alongside with the client, and the team will propose a technical solution in order to deliver the value. This ticket, as Scrum teaches us, must be with the acronym INVEST: independent, negotiable, valuable, estimable, small, and testable. Right? This is obviously our baseline of what a user story is. And moving forward, we are going to go ahead and mess with the user stories. But before we do that, I also actually just want to touch base on what a spike is. So now this one you can quote me on. A spike is an investigation task. A spike is created when not enough information is present to deem a story ready for development. And the output of a spike is essentially to complete planning on a story in subsequent backlog grooming. So it's essentially just an investigation task in order to find more information to actually put onto a story that will then be picked up for development. Now, the reason I've gone ahead and done this first is we're actually going to go ahead and create a whole new ticket type on Azure, which is going to be our spike. We are very simply just going to remove a bunch of things off of it. We're going to create a custom field proposed solution. We're going to repurpose an existing field effort as our time box field. So just to also touch base on that, we don't actually size spikes with story points, right? We do this in time boxed hours. And we're going to also go ahead and just mess with the states a bit. These are the states that are going to go in. We've got a few in progress states that also give us a bit more clarity versus the ones that are there by default. And of course, closed is closed, right? So let's go ahead into our Azure DevOps situation here. And as you can see, there is no spike task currently. So we're going to want to create a new work item type. So it's spike, investigation. Let's go ahead and give it a, with the question mark, there it is. And let's maybe give it another color. Let's go with green. Thank you, Microsoft. Great. Now, as you can see, we've got a bare bones template for our new ticket type, which is the spike. We've got a description, we've got an empty slot here, and as you would find with most tickets, you've got your related work development and deployment to link your actual repo stuff to. So as I explained before, we're just actually going to go ahead, create a new field, and we are going to create a custom field called proposed solution, given that this is the spike and we want to come up with a solution, right? And what's very important here is just note that this layout section sometimes does name things weirdly. So even though this would be called proposed solution, that would be more how I reference it in queries and things, and you're actually welcome to call it whatever you want just for representation. Now this is going to go into this custom group at the bottom here. Let's just put it custom just so we can see. Oh gosh, it remembers me. So apologies. I'm going to actually use the proposed solution that I created before, but that is how you would do it. And now, as you can see, here's the IIBA custom field, and we've got our proposed solution, which is a text file. Now, the only other field we want to add, which I'm actually going to add into the side here, much like we would have points for the user stories, with the spike, we've got the time boxed hours, right? So I'm going to use an existing field though, and I'm going to use effort. And the reason I'm going to use effort is actually for navigation in the backlog view. It's very hard for me to show you until we get there. So I'm just going to move forward. But remember, with this label over here, I now no longer want it to be effort. I want it to be time box hours. So I'm going to add that now. And now you can see we've got a nice bare bones spike ticket. And as mentioned, I'm going to go ahead and just quickly mess with the states as well. So as you can see, it's just got new, active, and closed. That doesn't really work for us. So I'm just going to remove active from here. I'm going to actually add a new state for in progress, which it will see there. It is in the state category of in progress in blue. That is fine. Now you can see it there. Likewise, I'm actually going to now add blocked feedback of the color red. And that's obviously also in progress. Now, this is just obviously for when people want to represent that the story is blocked for whatever reason, or they are awaiting feedback. Now, remember, we did create that. Well, sorry, we haven't done that yet. I'll get to that. We also want to add a new state, review ready, just so we know when it's actually gone into review. We want to add paused. Now, paused is not necessarily the same as blocked. It just means that it was in progress and for some reason has been paused. And then another one is testing or QA, whatever you want to call it, right? So now what we've actually done is created a whole new ticket type. We've got all our different states that we can actually look at and for better representation purposes. And once I create the project, I'll actually go ahead and create the spike and show you what this looks like. Before we do that, I do want to go ahead and actually edit the existing user story type just to show you. So now you see we've got our spike included in the list. We're actually going to go ahead and edit this user story just so it is a bit more acceptable in my opinion. The first thing I'm going to do, which is a bit controversial, I'm actually going to remove this acceptance criteria. And the reason for that, you're going to understand in a bit more down the line. But now what I'm also going to first do is actually just go ahead, look at the states again. The states don't really represent, the spike's got a lot more interesting states now. So I'm going to go ahead and hide these ones. We don't really want these again. We're going to actually go ahead and add these. And what you should find now is that my previously created states should actually be there. So now it's very easy to actually just replicate this across with the same colors and everything. And what else was there? Review. Missed one. Great. Now, if we go back to the layout, what I'm also going to do is actually go ahead and add a new group underneath the description tab here. Again, we'll just call this idea custom for now. And you can see obviously which panel you want it to be in. We want it to be on the left, so we're going to add it here. Now we can also go in here, add a new field. And what I'm going to create a new field is called blocked reason, which is going to be a text field. Yeah, gosh, it does remember me. I'm sorry, guys. Great. So now in the IABA custom, you can see the blocked reason. And on top of that, just to show you another type that I also actually use with my team. And the reason I do this is, I'll explain now, but it's essentially timesheet ticket type. So this is actually going to be a pick list. All right. And essentially the way we work is that we have like projects that will work with clients, and then we might have enhancement work or SLA or whatever the type might be. So on the actual timesheets, when we have to log it, I actually just have their SLA, project work, enhancement work, and people are actually able to choose from that. So everyone's on the same page. Now, that is it for the user stories. However, one thing we must do before we actually move on is actually, and create our project, is actually go back to this process tab, Scrum demo, and you see here, obviously here's our work item types. It's got the spike, it's got the edited user story, but now we've got this backlog levels tab we need to go into, right? And on this, you see this requirements backlog. Obviously, the top level backlog is more the epics and features. We don't really want to touch that, but on this requirements backlog, which is where we're going to be busy, it only currently has stories. Now, in order to edit this, you actually need to go and edit here, and now you can see here is my newly created spike. So we still want this to show up here. So I'm going to go ahead and add the spike. And now you can see it sitting here. So now we're ready actually with our beginning process to create our first project, right? So I'm going to just quickly share my slide just to show you what we're going to be doing before I start running through it. So I'm going to create this new team project from our Scrum demo, which is going to obviously inherit that process. We're going to go ahead, create this new epic IBA. We're going to create this new epic ready to be groomed, which I'll explain. We are going to create a child feature under the epic. We're going to create a user story, which is the demo of the new user story. We're going to create a child spike, which is the spike demo. And we're going to go ahead and add those tickets to sprint one. I just want to show you what I'm going to be looking at while I'm doing this as well. So very simply, and I'm going to explain why I'm doing everything. So I'm going to go back to this process tab. And on the Scrum demo thing here, although you can do it from the actual page, I just like doing it here. I'm actually going to say new team project. So we're going to say IBA demo private. And as you can see here, the work item process is actually Scrum demo, which is our newly created one. So I'm going to create that. Let's just give it a second. It's usually quick. Yep, there we go. And now we've got our newly created IIBA demo. So moving forward, I'm going to go straight into the boards. I'm going to, you know what, actually at the top here. So what, I don't know if everybody knows this, but you can actually choose your favorites that you want to create over here. So I'm just going to pin the spike in the user story. I'm going to go ahead and actually create that epic first, right? That is our top level of the hierarchy. So I'm going to go ahead and create the IIBA epic. Very simply, I'm going to save and close this. It's great. I'm going to create another epic now that I call ready to be groomed. Now, the reason I have created this epic is I have found backlogs get very messy sometimes. And what is very nice is that my team knows anytime they create a story that's going to go into a future backlog grooming, or I myself do it or anything, and anytime the story is not ready, we actually go ahead and on the side here, we will relate this ready to be groomed epic. Now you'll see it in practice now. I'm going to do it shortly, but what that means is anytime you visit this epic, you're actually able to see the stories that are still waiting to be groomed, which is quite powerful. What did actually come up today, literally, is how to actually prioritize in this ready to be groomed epic, but I will get to that. Now that we've got our two epics, I'm going to go back into the IIBA one. I'm going to actually go ahead and create a new feature. And I'm going to go ahead and call it micro class. Great. Now that we're in the feature, I'm going to go ahead and show us what the actual user story and spike looks like. I go user story, and I'm going to call it story demo. Now you can see my newly created user story, right? We've got our IIBA custom field here. We've got a blocked reason. We've got this timesheet ticket type, which is a drop down there, client to core. I just previously added this. And as likewise, you see the story points, you see the priority, you see the classifications. Obviously got the parent here. Now, what I do want to do while we are still here is what I will always do to this ticket. I'm just going to add some demo story points just for viewing it later. But I'm actually going to go ahead and add tags. Now, this is a huge part of actually what I do, and it is the almost entire way I navigate on backlog levels. But what I'm going to do is just for our demo purposes, I'm actually just going to put there IBA, and I'm going to put the word micro. Right? So as mentioned, the story isn't really ready for development now, is it? So I'm going to go ahead and save it, get a ticket number, and I'm going to go ahead and add a link to a related item, which is ready to be groomed. So now you can see here, it's related there. Fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and close the story for now. I'm now going to move forward. I'm going to go ahead and create a new item, which will be my spike. This will be the spike demo. You can see the time box hours are here. I'm going to go ahead and say 8, which would be a full working day. You can see the proposed solution is here in the description. Obviously, sorry, it hasn't been saved. That's why it wouldn't let us do that. You can see all the new states that we created earlier. And likewise, we need to go ahead and add tags, right? So I'm going to add the IBA, and I'm actually going to go ahead and add the word class, which is different to the previous one, which had the word micro. Likewise, this one I would not give to my devs. It's obviously not ready for development yet. So what do we have to do? Sorry, I need to add an existing item related ready to be groomed. Great, so now obviously on this feature level, we can see these. And sorry, I forgot to add this to iteration 1, which I just want to do for these two quickly. Great. Now that we've done that and you've actually managed to see them, I just want to show you how I actually navigate on these different pages. So be it on the workout, let's actually go ahead and go to the sprint board rather. Now we've obviously got these are two tickets, the spike and the story demo. Now what I'm going to do is a bit controversial, and please forgive me, but I'm actually going to use the backlog view. And I actually find this backlog view is a lot more powerful for me personally because I actually get to see the states, who it's assigned to and everything. And I'll also show you a bit more why. And it's also obviously very easy to actually then start kind of dragging into the different places you want to go. So in order to get this open, you just go ahead and do this, just out of interest. It also actually like tallies up your total user story points, but never mind that. Moving forward, I'm going to go ahead into this column options section. As you can see, we've got state assigned to remaining work. I'm going to get rid of this remaining work. We don't really need that. What I am going to do is add story points. I'm going to add, and remember this, effort, which we have now repurposed as time box for our spikes. I'm going to add the parent just so we can see who the parent is, and I'm going to actually add priority as well. Now we've got a much better view of actually what's going on the board, right? You can actually see the story points. You can see, okay, great, this doesn't have story points because it's a spike, but you can still see, hey, there's 8 hours that needs to go into this task. We didn't give a priority to the spike, but obviously we gave a priority to the story. It is actually quite important. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is also how we tend to prioritize in our sprints. And it's also probably how I'm going to prioritize in the ready to be groomed backlog. Any ticket that's not, we're going to actually start repurposing priority. And I'm going to probably have to use a query to get there, but enough of that. And very simply, this is how we navigate. It's just got, obviously it's not limited to this, but you can put in a ton of different options for what you want to see. And one more important thing is that whenever I actually want to come here, I hit this filter option. And what this is now going to show you is why these tags are so important. It shows you the different tags in the sprint. Now, if I hit rather IIBA, you can see that these two are actually still related to IIBA. However, if I wanted to say IIBA and micro, I'd take out the I. If I wanted to say micro, now you can see it's just this one. So obviously, if you want to be able to like cross-reference which ones are crossing over, this becomes a very powerful tool. All right. On to the next logical break in this presentation, if you will. We are going to, let me just go ahead and share the slides again. We're going to talk team agreements quickly. Again, this is why I was sort of assuming that you've got a basic knowledge of Scrum and Agile. For this presentation, we're just going to chat through definition of ready and done. So definition of ready in a traditional setting is essentially what does the ticket need in order to be ready for development? So it can be very simply like, does it have the required information? Is it sized? Is it this? Is it that? But the ticket cannot move into the sprint until it is ready for development. Likewise, we must define a definition of done. If we're going to move the ticket into done, what does that actually mean? Has it passed testing? Has the product owner signed off? Has this happened? I mean, I'm not going to get too much into it. We are still going to talk a bit more on it, but I just wanted to actually chat through what these definitions are that we need to look at. Now, what I'm actually going to do is, much like I know I'm speaking to a bunch of business analysts, so I'm preaching to the choir, you get everything in writing, right? So why would we do any differently within our team? We're going to actually go ahead and put this definition of done and definition of ready onto the wiki so that there is no haziness. Everyone can always go back and look at it. So in this overview section, you've got the wiki. I'm going to go ahead and create the project wiki. And I'm not going to go too deep into it. This is also where keeping Azure Agile comes in, right? I've got to, as a certified Scrum Master, I've got to, pay homage to Agile. So I'm just going to call this IIBA. Go ahead and save it. I'm going to need to close it. And now I can actually create new pages and say here, definition of ready, save, close. And we're going to create the definition of done, save, close. Great. So now obviously we've got these pages. Anyone can visit here at any point in time. So I'm going to have to, once again, go back to my slides. And what I've done is obviously I'm not going to take you through the whole creation of creating a definition of ready and done, but I've essentially grabbed what is actually my live definition of ready from my team. And then I've just written a basic definition of done, but which a lot of you will be familiar with as a I want to, so that it gives us that context. And remember, we moved that acceptance criteria field out before. Here you can see it needs to have acceptance criteria, any extra technical details that might be there. What's optional there is this a core task that requires documentation. So the way we work is that we've got a core product and we roll out different versions to clients. So essentially, if we're making a core change, we need to obviously document it. And there we go. Do we need to separate the client testing into a different story, right? the checklist, the story must be sized, it must be less than 13 points to make it into the sprint. Have we got the required test data? Have we identified the dependencies? And then likewise, moving on to the definition of done. Again, this is just a demo. It's unit tests have passed, test coverage 75%, QA sign-off has been received, the code has been reviewed, the acceptance criteria are met, documentation complete if required, and PO is signed off. Now, obviously, in order to define these, you need to not only sit with the dev team, you need to sit with all relevant stakeholders so that once these are in place, everyone can always revisit it and everyone can actually say, great, I understand what it's ready, or I understand what done means, right? So moving forward, we also need to note that Aaron has ticket rules. And as I mentioned, so there must always be a parent. And I understand that the backlog gets messy quickly, which is what the ready to be groomed Epic is also for. However, I've also found that once you've always got a parent, there's always at least something to go back to and look at. So that is a rule. Obviously, it needs to meet the definition of ready and done. And there needs to be tags added so that we can actually filter through and be efficient when we're running through our grooming and everything. Now, why this is so important that I've also defined this is actually you can create templates on Azure DevOps, right? And so I've put this team's configuration. That's where we're actually going to head to. Now, essentially what I've done is I've taken this definition of ready, which we've defined, and I used an online HTML converter, just a simple one. I just copy pasted this in and I've got this HTML outputs. Please note, some of them do put out HTML that Azure DevOps doesn't like. So I did have to go through 3 or 4 links until I found one that allowed me to copy paste. But what we're going to go ahead and do is use this HTML, and I'm going to show you how we apply this as a template. So moving forward, and I'm quite literally just going to copy paste this. We are now going to go into project settings. Now, please remember, this is on a project level, not on an organization level. We're going to go to, Teams configuration. And now you can actually see at the top here is this area called templates. So this is just a fast way to fast track back to that Scrum demo Agile customization thing that we did. So that'll take you back to the organization level, but we're obviously still on a project level. So on this templates thing, now you can actually see, great, we can create templates for all the different tickets, right? So I'm going to create a new template. I'm going to call this the user story template, default template. And very simply, what I'm going to do is in the description, I'm going to go ahead and copy paste all this HTML that I've added. Save. So what happens now is that it's very easy for my team to actually, fast track back to the boards here. If you were to go ahead and create a new user story, you can click on these 3 dots here in the top right. Got this templates tab, and there is my user story template. We go ahead and click on it, and now my description has been populated with that definition of ready. And very simply, I can start writing, as a dev, I want to do the thing so that the thing is done, right? Obviously, what is very nice is that you can create a bunch of different templates for different teams, for different clients, whatever the case may be, and you can just apply them really all willy-nilly. Now, there's still a bit of overhead, right? Because you're creating a ticket and you're still applying this template and everything. So surely we would assume that we can automate it, right? So this is where ticket rules comes in. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to turn that template into an automated rule, which means what I'm going to have to do is go back onto the organization level, go back to our process, right? And give me a sec. We're going to go into our Scrum demo. We're going to go to our user story type here. And the one tab we didn't touch before, remember we touched layout and states, is rules. Now, this is obviously automated rules that you can do for any sort of ticket type. So we're just going to go ahead and create 3 different simple ones. The first one I'm going to do is auto apply template. So when a work item is actually created, then I want you to set the value of description to my HTML. Very easy. Now, before I actually go and show you what that looks like, I'm going to create one more rule on the user story ticket. And this is in relation to the blocked reason field that we created before. I'm going to call this blocked reason mandatory. And our ticket here is that when the work item state changes to blocked or feedback, then I'm going to make required my blocked reason field. What does this mean? If anybody wants to move a ticket into blocked, they have to actually explain to me why this is happening. I don't want to have to go through all the comments. I don't want to have to ping people to find out why. I just want a clear summary sitting right there waiting for me. Now, one more thing we're going to do before we actually go ahead and test out these new rules. We're just going to go ahead and go back to the Scrum demo. We're going to go ahead into our spike section, and we're going to create a new rule for our spike. And this is actually the proposed solution rule. So much like we did before, when the work item state changes to closed, I want them to actually tell me why, right? So now I'm making the required proposed solution field there. So while the outcome is obviously that we're finding details to actually put into the story subsequently, I would like obviously a paper trail to go back and actually find out what the proposed solution is and have all those details on the ticket. So I'm going to save that, and now we can actually go ahead and look what happens. Go back into our project. I'm going to go ahead and create a user story. Did it twice again, and now you can see our template is actually automatically applied. Wonderful. You are obviously still able to go into this template section and actually overwrite it with a different custom template if you wish. This just gives you a nice default to work with. I love the templates. Cool. So that's all I've really got for you on the rules. I think I've actually done quite well on time. So I was chatting with Larissa earlier, but I'm actually going to go ahead and show you some dashboards and queries quickly, which will be the final part of this presentation. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead back into the board section, head over to the queries. And I thought, I obviously don't want to do too much, but an interesting query I found that I created was actually carried stories. So it actually allows me to just click on it and look at what stories were carried from the previous sprint in a nice quick view. So I'm going to go ahead, create a new query. Now I have got all the stuff on the side here, so please forgive me, but work item type is any, of course. State, we want to actually say not in, and this is also a good tip, not enclosed, but if you actually put a comma, you're able to just say remove. So you're actually able to add a bunch of different states just by a comma, very simple. And we're going to add a new clause, and we're going to say the iteration path, which is obviously relating to the sprint, is equal to at current iteration. So there's a bunch of different at rules you can make, right? So obviously for us now, it's just this demo team iteration. And also worth noting, you can query across projects. And what is worth also noting is that if you hit this type of query here, and you hit work items and direct links, you're also able to start actually looking at children and everything and have that represented in the query. But we're not going into that right now. So I'm just going to go back onto our flat list of work items. And then the final thing we need for this is actually another thing we're going to go with create a date. And this is the only little bit of overhead that comes with this query is that I need to go backtrack to the previous sprint date. And obviously then what it'll do is say from that date up until the current iteration, kind of what was moved over, right? So I'm not going to go, I'm just going to remove this because I'm not going to mess with it now. I'm going to show you. So I need to save this query as carried stories. Fantastic. Let's just go back to queries. My query is assigned to me carried stories. I made a mistake. This needs to be a shared query. Apologies, guys. Otherwise, we're not actually going to be able to get it in the dashboard. So I don't know why it won't actually let me know. But anyway, what I want to do is actually now go ahead and go to the dashboard, right? So in this overview, you've got the dashboards. Now, I find this to be quite underutilized with a lot of projects. And while I don't necessarily make a ton of use of it, the way I do use it, it is actually very beneficial. what you're able to do is with this query that we've created, and I'm going to very embarrassingly not be able to show you because I didn't create that shared query, but you can actually go ahead and add a query results section here. Okay. So let's just say we're done editing. Now what this would allow you to do is actually go configure, and it would actually allow you to, of the shared queries, you see now obviously we don't have any, but if I created a shared query, it would be here, and it would very simply put everything down here in a nice broken down column, and you would actually have a very beautiful representation on this widget. So obviously if anybody asks me what stories carried from last sprint, I can just say, go look at the dashboard. It's very nice. Another thing I use on this dashboard is actually just assigned to. Now, this kind of makes a lot of sense for our QAs that don't necessarily just pick up tickets ad hoc because they get assigned to them when it gets into QA. And I mean, you can also, just as general, I mean, I created a leaderboard because you can actually create like your own little, it's not that one, but you can create your own little like leaderboard thing. It gives it you its own like custom HTML type markup language, and you're able to create your dashboard. So that is it in a nutshell. I was very cognizant of time, and I know there's a lot to talk about. Half an hour is not a very long time, but I just wanted to get across how we really are able to like know what state our tickets are in, how we're able to view it, how I'm able to show the stakeholders what's going on, which is also on that dashboard level, and really just how to create simple queries. That'll be it. And I believe we've got question times now. Over to Nasifu. And thank you everybody for listening.
Thank you, Aaron, for sharing that great demo with us. I was able to learn quite a bit in this short space of time. I think you covered quite a number of things that I found very useful. I liked how you had the user story templates and how part of your field was the extra technical details. I think that sometimes we forget to include that, and sometimes there's a need for that. I'll just go through the questions and see if there are any questions. Okay, there is a question from Lizzo. She'd like to know that. Okay, so her question is: we're planning on moving from Azure DevOps to Jira this year. Sorry, have you used both, and which do you prefer? Also, how about a session to set up Jira?
So I have used both. The honest truth is I haven't used Jira probably for about 2 years, so my knowledge on that side is a bit lacking. I would say that when I started with Azure DevOps a year ago, I definitely would have said I preferred Jira. However, given how I'm able to now customize it, and I mean, obviously, once you become a master in your domain, I would now definitely say I prefer Azure DevOps. A note is also that a lot of what I've actually shown you has come out in the last 12 months. So I'm always actually looking at their release notes and everything, and I'm looking at how I can actually continuously optimize because I am given the space in my current job to do so. It's the best I
Uh,
can do for you, Lizelle.
Thank you. Lizzo, I don't know if you're able to unmute yourself and let us know if that's answered your question or if you have any thing else that you want to ask.
No, that certainly did answer my question. I think it's just change and getting used to stuff. In the beginning, I was also very frustrated with Azure, and now that we're going to move over to Jira, I'm starting to love it for some reason.
I must
So
say,
yeah.
there's sometimes Microsoft does do things in a bit of a turnaround way. I mean, I can comment on that on the AWS and Azure level too, right? So once you get it, though, it is actually quite powerful. And as you could see, I was able to jump around very quickly.
Cool. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. So we've got a lot of comments. I'm trying to see if we have any more questions, but I'll just read the comments that have come through so far. The template is great. I can see myself using this. Awesome demo, Aaron. This is better than Jira and Confluence. Very cool. Thank you. And there's someone else saying we use work items, so this has been very valuable. And someone else saying that's very interesting. I'm not sure if there's any more questions. If anyone else would like to just, if you have a question, maybe you'd like to, oh, sorry, there's a question from Ruth that I had missed. Am I correct in my understanding that Azure DevOps and Microsoft Work Items are one in the same?
Correct. I mean, your work items exist within the Azure DevOps space, right?
Ruth, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, all good. We use work items obviously all the time, but I haven't been like into the actual DevOps space and into that compute space and things like that. So I hear them bandied around in our organization, but I'm just trying to understand. I guess it's just part and parcel of what you're referring to as Azure DevOps.
Exactly. So I know the name's a bit confusing because when you hear that word DevOps, you tend to think a bit more technical sometimes, but Azure DevOps is really just the
100%,
alternative to
yeah.
Jira. There's nothing more beyond that. It obviously does allow you to host the repos and everything for the developers, but that's not what we're dealing with today.
Yeah, cool. No,
Yeah.
that's cool. I just wanted to make sure that we're not two very different things.
So, I mean, I only showed you a couple, but, you know, I've also created things such as like to-dos, which the developers will have in their code base. I mean, I've messed with bugs. I've done a ton of things, you know.
Cool.
There's
No,
really no
thanks.
limit. Yeah.
That was great.
Awesome.
Okay, we have a question from Ahmad. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. And he or she would like to find out if you can share who you are working for.
Sure, I can plug my company. I'm actually wearing the shirt at Jira. We do no deploy Fridays. So we build chatbots, but we build meaningful chatbots for like asset managers and finance houses where they're actually fully transactional and you're actually able to like withdraw, move money, do your switches. You don't even have to log in, get your balance and stuff like that. So it's in the AI space and it's actually pretty exciting. I don't know if that
Ahmad, I'm not
answers
sure
your
if you wanna
question.
add that. Anything to that? Okay, that's fine. I think you've probably answered their question. And yeah, so it doesn't seem like we have any more questions. If anyone else has one last question, let's just give you a minute or so to add that on. And if not, then we'll just be closing this event. Thank you for everyone who's joined this event. Our YouTube channel has been shared with you on the link in the chat box so that you can check that out. So this will be shared on the YouTube channel and we'll also share it on our LinkedIn page. And then there's also a link for anyone else who'd like to join the IIBA. And just Aaron, in closing, I don't know if you want to share your LinkedIn details or if people want to connect with you, or if you welcoming them to ask you any questions afterwards, if maybe they forgot to ask you something, if you're welcome to open to that.
Yes, I'm always message friendly. Feel free to ping me. I guess my name's Aaron Khan. You can come find me on LinkedIn or on the post, right? Not sure if it's worth sharing. Yeah.
That's fine. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for listening. And thanks IIBA for the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks for talking with us today, Aaron. And I hope everybody has a lovely evening. Cheers.
Yeah. Cheers, everyone.